Hey Ravens fans, I'm Garrett Downing. This is Ryan Mink, and it's time for this week's edition of the Flock Mailbag. OTAs continued this week, second week of them, and that's where we'll start today's edition of the Mailbag. Daniel Smith wants to know about some of the guys who weren't here. He says, I understand that OTAs are voluntary, but it seems a little discouraging that so many veterans are not there to help with the infusion of new talent. How do we get more players to show up to OTAs? Ryan, just to preface this, there was a handful of guys who were here last week, like Anquan Bolden and Jimmy Smith, and a number of guys who weren't here this week, and that's probably what Daniel's alluding to here.
Right. Well, I don't really know that there is much that you can do. You know, head coach John Harbaugh, I know he talks to guys, he texts with players, and, you know, he talked to Matt Burke, I know, back in February and said, hey, I'd like you to be around a little bit this year to help with the young offensive line. You know, you got two rookies there. You can't force some of these veterans, and really for them, I don't think it's that key for them to be here. You know, I mean, a lot of this is teaching, it's installing, it's working with these younger players.
Ray Lewis knows the defense.
Right, exactly. Anquan Bolden knows the offense. So I don't think it's essential that they have to be here the entire time. And one other note that I'd just like to point out is that just because they weren't here on Wednesday doesn't mean that they're not here, period. That's just the only day that the media saw. I mean, I know for a fact that Jimmy Smith and Pernell McPhee have been here for almost the entire voluntary program, so it's not like they're skipping it altogether or something.
Right, and you mentioned a guy like Matt Burke. He was a guy who wasn't here last week, who was here this week, and he's a 15-year veteran who does he necessarily need this time for himself? You know, maybe not, but he's here to help some of those younger guys along, and I think there's other players like that. A guy like Joe Flacco has been here throughout the OTAs. He wants to be here because he says, I kind of make this thing tick as the quarterback of the offense, so I want to be here. I want to help these younger guys grow and foster that development, and he's here. So it's not like everybody's skipping this thing. A lot of the guys who really need to be here are here, the younger players. Some of those veterans are coming in and out. They may not be here each and every day, but don't sound the alarm. A lot of guys are coming. So, all right, next question from Clayton Brown. He wants to know, as of right now, what is the most interesting position battle?
Well, I know you might disagree with me, but I'm going to go a wide receiver, and I think specifically at the number 3 spot, you've got a really good battle shaping up there between Jacoby Jones, who the Ravens signed this offseason, and you've got Tandon Doss and Laquan Williams. I think that's going to be a great battle. You know, you got Jacoby, he's got the speed, he makes sense opposite of Torrey Smith, but you've got Tandon Doss, who I think might have the best hands on the team and has shown that throughout camp. And Laquan Williams had a great practice on Wednesday, another guy fighting for a roster spot and really flashing that potential, that playmaking potential. So I think that battle is really good, but also don't forget that there's a few guys that are going to be jockeying just to make the roster. A guy like Tommy Streeter, who I know you fans are really, is really popular with you guys, and David Reed. I know that they're going to be battling just to make this team. So there's going to be some competition for that number 3 spot and at the back end.
Like you said, I may disagree with you. I think the most interesting position battle is the battle for that number 2 running back spot behind Ray Rice. You have 3 guys really fighting for that spot. The rookie Bernard Pierce and the second-year guys Anthony Allen and Damian Berry. All 3 have impressed in their own ways so far through these OTAs. What's really going to tell the difference is when these guys strap the pads on and they start actually hitting each other, and you see how they respond to contact. Because you can only tell so much when it's kind of like touch football out there. You're just installing things. But once these guys get the pads on, that'll really tell the difference. I think this battle is one that you're going to see continue throughout most of the offseason and throughout training camp. All right, third question comes from Brenda, and she's asking about those wide receivers that you were talking about. I want to know how good this group is doing. How do they look with Joe? Is the chemistry there? Are their routes and speed looking pretty good?
Yeah, I think they have looked pretty solid so far. And offensive coordinator Cam Cameron on Wednesday said that he's been pleased so far with what he's seen from this offense. You know, I think a big difference this year is that you have some younger guys and players that have grown with Joe Flacco. So, you know, they know the offense at this point, and they know Joe. You know, guys like I said before, Tandon, Laquan, you know, Anquan's been here for his 3rd year. You have the 2 young tight ends who have been here for now 3 years. So I think that is starting to really pay dividends, and the whole offense just looks more comfortable to me. You know, it just looks like they're more on the same page early on. It's a good sign to see.
Yeah, I think Torrey Smith is a guy that could really have a big season this year.
Yeah.
I think him and Joe Flacco could have big years.
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking to you about this, chatting your ear off. I think Torrey could have a 1,000-yard season. I really do. I think he's starting to develop into that all-around wide receiver.
And you think he could have a 1,000-yard season. I think Joe Flacco could have about a 4,000-yard season. I think he could put up some big numbers this year for the reasons that you mentioned. He's familiar with these guys. He knows Anquan Bolden. He has the safety net there with Dennis Pitta, and Ed Dixon, I think, could have he's another guy who I think could have a big season. So these guys are familiar with one another. They're getting a better grasp on the offense, and it looks good right now. That can only mean positive things moving forward. So, all right, Ravens fans, that's all the time we have for this week, but thanks for watching, and make sure you keep it locked right here on BaltimoreRavens.com.